Well, I'm definitely going to have to split this one up. This is the same 2 hours and 15 minutes of gameplay that the first pre-aiming supercut came from. Big name here to start. When Pistola's first target dies, his aim goes a little wonky and he has a hanging stab. And then at the end, as the second player comes up from overshield, Pistola jumps either in the frame that player becomes visible or in the frame just before that. The aiming movements, the zooms, the jumping, it's constantly coincidental to what their target's doing. I pretty much guarantee that that one aspect of this old gameplay can be studied statistically to prove that these players were cheating, because it's how the aimbot works. And you can argue in a clip like this that Pistola should be able to time this up more often than random. And that's true for this clip, but most of the time it's not true and it should basically be random.
How Pistola opens this game up here for Final Boss.
Yeah, Pistola is definitely going to be this kind of X factor for Final Boss, especially in this tournament. I know last tournament he started off their games getting 2 no-scopes and things like that. It was great. He's been...
How Pistola opens this game up here for Final Boss.
Yeah, Pistola is definitely going to be this kind of X factor for Final Boss, especially in this tournament. I know last tournament he started off their games getting 2 no-scopes and things like that. It was great. He's been...
How Pistola opens this game up here for Final Boss.
Yeah, Pistola is definitely going to be this kind of X factor for Final Boss, especially in this tournament. I know last tournament he started off their games.
Obviously that movement is textbook. His target is dead, but he's moving his aim back and forth and then waiting for the burst to complete until he moves his aim the last time. And then here we're going to see that he jumps in the same frame that this player becomes visible. So he jumps in the frame before. But that doesn't even really matter here because we're already seeing him commit textbook aimbot movements. And I'm not going to be the one who studies this statistically to prove this is cheating. But somebody else can.
How Pistola opens this game up here for Final Boss.
Yeah, Pistola is definitely going to be this kind of X factor for Final Boss, especially in this tournament. I know last tournament he started off their games getting 2 no-scopes and things like that. It was great. He's been...
Here we have aPoopG with bad sniper technique that we're going to see a lot. For some reason, sniper swiping doesn't really work on MCC that well, or I haven't figured out the timing that works anymore. But it worked pretty good in Halo 3. Especially when you were host. If you weren't sniper swiping in Halo 2, you weren't good at the game. And they turned it way down for Halo 3, and a lot of people probably thought it didn't really work anymore. But it definitely did. The timing probably varied with your latency a little bit, so it didn't work that great. But when you were a host, and I bet on LAN it worked pretty well. And when you're playing against good players, you need to be fast. And this is just slow. And there's no point trying to aim at someone, waiting, trying to aim at them again, when you can just aim towards them and have good timing. So here we're just going to see what's basically slow, bad technique for a tournament like this. This is the type of snipe you would try for in certain situations when you have the time, not when a player's looking directly at you, and certainly not as a default technique.
It's a sniper. aPoopG continuing. It's a sniper. aPoopG can... It's a sniper. aPoopG can... It's a sniper. aPoopG can... It's a sniper.
So he snaps right to him and doesn't shoot. And we're going to see this type of sniping a lot, where they line it up or get really close to lining it up and then slowly kind of take a really nice high percentage shot at the player. But this is really slow. You don't need to aim at the player in Halo 3. You just need to aim towards them and have good timing.
aPoopG continuing to...
Why would you take the time to aim at someone when you can just aim towards them? Here we have aPoopG's aim going a little wonky when his target moves behind an obstacle. And then he has a textbook aimbot movement for the 360. I haven't figured out how this works on MCC yet.
Across the map, and now he's getting positioned here. Top of final boss is sniped out. A great start for Dynasty, especially across the map, and now he's getting positioned here. Top of final boss is sniped.
So the textbook movement is on this next shot, and it's the very, very small down movement just before he fires. You can see how his aim goes slightly down for 2 frames. And then he gets quite a bit of recoil. Sometimes this is really obvious and you can really see that little bounce, as there's just a sharp downward movement to where the firing position is. And it's happening because there's this sharp down movement or a small down movement and then most of the recoil. And as we've talked about, that really shouldn't happen. In this case, that probably wasn't even an input. His aim is just following a certain spot on this player. And that's not what really happens when your target falls. When your target falls, your aim is going to move up the player model. In legit gameplay, this effect can appear to be produced, but it actually happens when your target is moving up, not down, or when you're moving down. And then we can see that he gets most of the recoil. That's also a really fine adjustment for the 360, and he didn't need to make it to hit this player, which is just something worth noticing as well. I'm sure we'll see some that are worse than this, but this is pretty textbook. And if you want good examples of this aimbot indicator, just go watch any of the old montages.
Across the map, and now he's getting positioned here. Top of final boss is sniped out. A great start for Dynasty, especially aPoopGamer here. Able to across the map, and now he's getting positioned here. Top of final boss is sniped out. A great start for Dynasty, especially aPoopGamer here. Able to survive.
Here we have aPoopG pre-aiming, and what gives it away is that it's an off-tracking movement when their motion is divergent, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. And then after that, as he's trying to shoot the player, he's making a lot of little movements.
Able to survive in the needle pit. Ogre 2 pushing in on aPoopG's position. Remember, he has final. Able to survive in the needle pit. Ogre 2 pushing in on aPoopG's position. Remember, he has final ball.
So what I mean about the divergent motion is this.
Able to survive.
aPoopG is moving right, but his target is moving forward. And we're going to see that this shows that this is an off-tracking movement. And in this case, it should make the reticle and his target converge. But I'm going to be using the term divergent in both cases where the reticle and the target are converging or diverging. So when I use the term, I'm talking about whether their aim should be diverging from some equilibrium. aPoopG strafes all the way around the corner. But his aim is in the same relative position. So he hits it there. which means that aPoopG had to be making a small continuous adjustment left.
Able to survive in the needle pit. Ogre 2 pushing in on aPoopG's position. Remember, he has final.
And since he does so in a way that keeps his aim perfectly off track on this player, that shows that the movement was not an accident.
Able to survive in the needle pit. Ogre 2 pushing in on aPoopG's position. Remember, he has final. Able to survive in the needle pit. Ogre 2 pushing in on aPoopG's position. Remember, he has final ball.
This one's a bit of a stretch. Ogre 2 has full shields, and he's going to get shot from his left twice, and he just turns and fires immediately, which is kind of weird. That's not what I would do in this situation. But there's a possible explanation, because shortly after that he gets shot in the back and killed by his own teammate. And I feel like we've seen a couple times where players throw out like beatdowns and stuff right before they die, even when they should have known that they weren't even going to come close to hitting anyone. So some of those things are starting to look to me like the aimbot trying to do anything before the player dies. And this could be something like that. The shot in the back happens pretty late. The length of time between Ogre 2 doing this and getting shot in the back is pretty long. So I would be surprised if this was predictive aimbot behavior, but it definitely could be.
Every MLG event has been a top player in every single Halo.
Yeah, you can't say enough.
Every MLG event has been a top player in every single Halo. Every MLG event has been a top player in every single Halo.
Yeah, you can't say enough.
Every MLG event has been a top player in every single Halo.
Yeah, you can't say enough about the.
Here we have Pistola with some weirdly accelerated aim. The first sharp movement is a kick out, but the second one is not a kick out.
Show here for Dynasty. Pistola inside the flag with the sniper.
Yeah.
Good. Show here for Dynasty. Pistola inside the flag with the sniper.
Yeah.
Show here for Dynasty. Pistola inside the flag with the sniper.
Yeah.
Show here for Dynasty. Pistola inside the flag with the sniper.
Yeah.
This clip is from Frauditself. Here we're going to see him pre-aim, then we're going to see him land a shot right on the edge of the player model. Then we're going to see a little back and forth when the player dies, but that one's probably within normal tolerances. And then we're going to see him try to no-scope someone with bad technique. And his aim is also going to hit the second player's center line several times. And this clip made me realize that there's actually two different types of snipes that I'm seeing in the tournament. And that's the movement and or shot at center line, and shots right on the edge of the player model. I think those are literally the only two types of snipes I've seen, when the variety should obviously be like practically limitless.
Good at stopping the flanks. And I want to know, guys, who was the one player from Dynasty that most impressed you in their match against SQ? Good at stopping the flanks. And I want to know, guys, who was the one player from Dynasty that most impressed you in their match against SQ? Good at stopping the flanks. And I want.
So here we can see this kind of smooth bounce back and forth as he looks down sword. And this little bounce hits this player's center line exactly. And we can tell by his movement after that that he didn't really intend for that to happen.
Who was the one player from Dynasty?
That kill shot's actually fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then here on this first shot, we can see that his aim stops very close to center line. Bounces off center line, actually. And then after the second shot, right there, there's a little movement right that hits the center line again. So he hits that player's center line sharply twice, which is just something worth noticing. And again, this is just bad technique. You shouldn't be trying to no-scope someone on the 360 with sharp aiming movements. I remember very clearly Gandhi commentating a tournament, and I agree with this completely, that really sharp, flashy no-scopes are actually more luck than skill. That's like verbatim what he said. And on the 360 that was true. No-scopes that were lined up with patience and motion were actually much more a sign of skill. And I'm not saying that a good player is not going to try to do it purely with their aiming sometimes, but I think this is a case where that would have been the correct approach.
Good at stopping the flanks.
And I want to know, guys, who was the one player from Dynasty that most impressed you in their match against SQ?
He's got full shields. There's enough distance there to just let it be patience, but he's still trying to make these last second adjustments.
Good at stopping the flanks.
And I want to know, guys, who was the one player from Dynasty that most impressed you in their match against SQ?
Actually, bad technique. Here we have Ogre 2 with oddly delayed reaction time. That's actually a common theme with this aimbot. And then he turns 180 degrees right to a dead player. And with these types of movements, it's not just that they're turning and being accurate, it's that they turn at a single speed, and it seems really purposeful, and then happens to hit players constantly, or in this case a dead body.
He's on fire and no one's gonna stop him.
Ogre 2 versus Ape.
He's on fire and no one's gonna stop him.
Ogre 2 versus Ape.
He's on fire and no one's gonna stop him.
Ogre 2 versus Ape.
So it's hard to tell what frame this player actually came into view. So his reaction time here was between 433 and 467 milliseconds. So getting pretty close to half a second. And that's getting to be pretty long. I'm sure that happens sometimes, but oddly delayed reaction time is a common theme with this aimbot.
He's on fire and no one's gonna stop him.
Ogre 2 versus Ape.
Here we have Heinz possibly pre-aiming at the second player, and then he has some wonky target locking aim.
He's really gone back to the form he was at before, I guess, last tournament. Last tournament, it was almost as if he took a step backwards. He's really gone back to the form he was at before, I guess, last tournament. Last tournament, it was almost as if he took a step backwards. He's really gone back to the form he was at before, I guess, last tournament. Last tournament, it was almost as if he took a step back. He's really gone back to the form he was at before, I guess, last tournament.
So maybe 3 target locks here. This one looks like a lock. That position locks briefly. And then the last position is a lock. Those are really just short, snappy movements too. This just isn't natural.
He's really gone back to the form he was at before, I guess, last tournament. Last tournament, it was almost as if he took a step backwards. Now
Here we have Fear itself with some off tracking. That would be fine if it was rare. And then he pre-aims and moves his aim the wrong direction.
Now on Dynasty, I think he's found a nice home.
And when we get a chance after Fear itself dies, I want to go back on board with Heinz. The kid has had...
Now on Dynasty, I think he's found a nice home.
And when we get a chance after Fear itself dies, I want to go back on board with Heinz. The kid has had...
So in both instances here, their motion is divergent, but the aim is locked. His target is pretty much purely moving sideways. Fear itself is moving forward quite a bit. But his aim is locked on center line. And then on the second player, most of Fear itself's motion is sideways, and his target is moving straight forward. But his relative reticle position doesn't diverge. And unless he's putting in a continuous movement to adjust for that, there should be immediate divergence. So he's putting in a continuous movement to off-track this player left, but then he moves his aim to the right.
Now on Dynasty, I think he's found a nice home.
And when we get a chance after Fear itself dies, I want to go back on board with Heinz. The kid has had...
Here we have Fear itself pre-aiming. Fear itself is going to make a very small adjustment just before this player comes into view.
Team land, and I actually want to listen in with this Dynasty squad and hear how are they keeping... Team land, and I actually want to listen in with this Dynasty squad and hear... Team land, and I actually want to listen in with this Dynasty squad and hear...
He might not even be looking at his screen when he does this.
Team land, and I actually want to...
So right here we can see he makes a small down movement. That starts shortly before this player comes around the corner. That's a very fine, gradual adjustment on the 360.
Team land, and I actually want to listen in with this Dynasty squad and hear how are they keeping final... Team land, and I actually want to listen in with this Dynasty squad and hear how are they keeping final...
Here we have Fear itself just with some wonky aim. His firing movement to this player who's behind cover is accurate, but he appears to only try and land the first bullet or so, and then his aim moves quickly off target.
By Dynasty, they managed to stop almost every single one of Final Boss's attempt of caps.
Well, here by go.
By Dynasty, they managed to stop almost every single one of Final Boss's attempt of caps.
Well, here
by Dynasty, they managed to stop almost every single one of Final Boss's attempt of caps.
Well,
here we have aPoopG with some weird movement. There's also some pulsing in his aim when he shoots at the second player.
By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other team.
and there's
By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other team.
and
We'll see a worse example of this in this video, that players don't really change their mind about what they're doing that fast. When there's decision making that changes too rapidly or too much indecisiveness, those have been reliable aimbot indicators for me. You can't be a good Halo player and be indecisive about what you're doing. Oh, am I going to shoot this guy? Wait, I'm going to do this. Wait, I'm going to do this. Nobody actually plays like that. And he seems like he might be shooting a little high on this first kill shot. And we've seen this a few times now where players either give up too fast or don't make any aiming inputs after a shot that it's really not clear was going to land. And I would say this falls into that category. And then after he quickly turns away from that first player, what he's doing doesn't really align with the death sounds in a way where he's going to decide that that player was dead because they made another groan. And it's not clear to me what he saw on screen that would have convinced him that that player was actually dead.
By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other team.
and there's
See how fast that was? If he was doing that because he wasn't sure that he actually killed the player, he doesn't actually double check it. He just starts to double check it and then immediately changes his mind.
By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other. By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other team. By going through green box, he's going to get a different angle and be able to put in shots on the other team.
and there's
Here we have Victory X pre-aiming at this first player, and then he maybe snaps to a teammate's center line. That's probably just a coincidence in this clip, but I do know that this aimbot can target your teammates. And then at the end he maybe has an extra shot.
His teammates on the training, drop the flag in there and get his shields back.
And it's those kind of plays that help Final Boss win that last tournament and why they're such a good team. I mean, to think in just that little of a micro situation.
His teammates on the training.
So this player's running to the right here. Victory X's movement stops about right there. Possibly exactly on this player's center line.
His teammates on the training, drop the flag in there and get his shields back.
And it's those kind of plays that help Final Boss win that last tournament and why they're such a good team. I mean, to think in just that little of a micro situation.
His teammates on the training, drop the flag in there and get his shields back.
And it's those kind of plays that help Final Boss win that last tournament and why they're such a good team. I mean, to think in just that little of a micro situation.
His teammates on the training, drop the flag in there and get his shields back.
And it's those kind of plays that help Final Boss win that last tournament and why they're such a good team. I mean, to think in just that little of a micro situation.
Saying there's pre-aiming in this clip is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but probably not. In this clip, Victory X has a little snap back in his aim on the first player, to a degree that's uncommon for the 360, and then he probably pre-aims at the second player, and it's possibly given away by one of those small purposeful movements when he can't see what's going on. And then at the very end, his aim goes up and down in just kind of a weird way, and there's a bit of hesitation there. So here we can see him make two movements. And the second one is kind of fine. And when he's planning to turn to BR1 and then go up there, doing this in two distinct movements with the first one possibly hitting this player is suspicious to me. So that's where his aim stops after the first movement. And like I said, this is a stretch, but it's not as much of a stretch as you think, because this is actually how this aimbot works, and it does this constantly. If you had the VODs for all of these players, for every game, this would be really easy to prove, because you can show that they're aiming at players constantly that they can't see. Here we have Pistola with some vertical stuttering in his aim.
Captures. He got trapped in sword by himself and was unable to do anything. Captures. He got trapped in sword by himself and was unable to do.
Probably related to this player being accelerated by this blast.
Captures. He got trapped in sword by himself and was unable to do anything. Captures. He got trapped in sword by himself and was unable to do anything. Captures. He got trapped in sword by himself and was unable to do anything.
Always on.
This clip is a little weird. This might not mean anything, but maybe somebody knows that it is relevant. And it's Pistola shooting the rocket and then switching to his BR. But he does this so soon after firing the rocket that the rocket doesn't actually shoot. And I really don't remember this ever happening to me. Obviously, I've died and had my rockets not come out on Xbox Live, even though I fired the rocket and made the sound and everything. But even on Xbox Live, I don't remember ever switching to the BR too fast and having my rocket not actually fire.
Always on sword and training side. Scott, you made mention of it earlier, but now we see that the final boss.
Obviously, this could just be a glitch, but it could be a problem with the macro switching weapons too quickly.
Always on sword and training side. Scott, you made mention of it earlier, but now we see that the final. Always on sword and training side. Scott, you made mention of it earlier, but now we see that the final boss.
Here we have Crutch with some stuttering aim, especially when this player dies. He also moves his aim off this player when it wasn't clear at all that his shots were going to land.
Run the flag underneath Sword Bridge versus a team like Final Balls. You have too many clutch players. And run the flag underneath Sword Bridge versus a team like Final Balls. You have too many clutch players. And Run the flag underneath Swordbridge versus a team like Final Balls. You have too many clutch players.
And
run the flag underneath Swordbridge versus a team like Final Balls. You have too.
Not only was he not close to shooting that player in the head for the kill shot, it's not even clear that he was trying to do that before he gave up on shooting this player entirely.
Run the flag underneath Swordbridge versus a team like Final Balls. You have too many clutch players.
And Clutch.
Here we have Fear itself possibly pre-aiming.
Though, once again on the flank, he's coming up right behind Fear itself. Though, once again on the flank, he's coming up right behind Fear itself.
Obviously, the zoom is pretty close to being coincidental. He zooms a couple frames after this player becomes visible, so it's not in the exact same frame like it was with Ogre 2 earlier. But again, here there's just this very small, fine adjustment that possibly stops on this player's center line when they're not visible.
Though, once again on the flank, he's coming up right behind Fear itself. Though, once again on.
From here, it's a very small movement up, and then a very gradual movement left.
Though, once again on the flank, he's coming up right behind Fear itself.
I'm not really sure why they would program the aimbot to work that way. If I had to guess, it would be that in the end, they decided that the aimbot is less obvious if it works that way, instead of just snapping right to players as soon as they become visible. But either way, that just reminds me that I bet if you look at the players' reaction times in this tournament, they won't be random. They're not going to follow a normal statistical distribution. I bet that's true, and I bet you could prove this is an aimbot by studying that. It could be quite randomized, not least of all because I think the aimbot sometimes has a certain part of the target's body in mind, that it's waiting for that one part of the body to become visible before it reacts, or before it starts the timer to reaction. But then we've seen other times where the reaction is basically immediate. And then when you start talking about the delayed reaction times, it just becomes clear to me that there's a system for that. And I would be really surprised if that system follows anything like what the normal distribution for human reaction time should be. I practically guarantee that if you're interested in proving this mathematically, which again I'm not, I prefer just saying, hey, this is impossible, or hey, you're never going to see this in legit gameplay. And I think that these things will start to click for people when we do start looking at and talking through legit gameplay. Here we have Pistola pre-aiming. This is, in my opinion, a pretty purposeful movement that's obviously intended to target this player who he couldn't see. It's also bad pre-scoping technique, which is not an opinion, just a fact.
Clutch pulling the flag. He's just doing everything right here, guys.
Yeah, that's what a really important play.
Clutch pulling the flag. He's just doing everything right here, guys.
Yeah, that's what a really important play.
Clutch pulling the flag. He's just doing everything right here, guys.
Yeah, that's what a really important.
Clutch pulling the flag. He's just doing everything right here, guys.
Yeah, that's what a really important.
Clutch pulling the flag. He's just doing everything right here, guys.
Yeah, that's what a really important play, especially on.
Here we have Pistola pre-aiming, and then after that he turns around with a series of 5 quick axial movements.
Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
It's like Pistola's Master Chief runs faster than everyone.
So the pre-aiming movement is here at the start, and you can see him make a sharp arcing movement that stops suddenly, and it just so happens to be right where this player is. In isolation, this one would be a little bit of a stretch, But then he has that sharp series of axial movements, which is just nonsense.
Hit that 15-minute mark.
It's this movement here. A couple people on the esports subreddit seem to be having trouble with this one, so I'll help you out. Does that make more sense?
Minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
It's like Pistola's Master Chief runs fast and
hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
It's like Pistola's Master Chief runs fast and
hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0. Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0. Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
His reticle also moves sharply down after this first player dies. He goes from basically tracking him to a sharp downward movement.
Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
it's like Pistola's Master Chief runs fast.
Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
It's like Pistola's Master Chief.
Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
And then after that, he has this series of 5 axial movements. I haven't tested this one to see if it's impossible like Strong Sides was from video 3, but it probably is.
It's like Pistola's.
And it's also just a matter of, would a player ever turn around like this? You can see he does something like this. Instead of what anybody who's not cheating would do there.
Hit that 15-minute mark. They want to finish this one strong, 3-0.
It's like Pistola's Master Chief runs fast and everyone
Supercharged.
Here we have Pistola pre-aiming with a purposeful movement that coincides with the frame this player becomes visible. He then gets kicked out wildly when he's pretty much on target. And then after that, he tries to land the fake snipe technique when he can't even see the player anymore.
Supercharged.
He has armor lock without having to go.
Supercharged.
He has armor lock without having.
Supercharged.
He has armor lock without having.
Supercharged.
He has armor lock without having to go.
Here we have Pistola probably pre-aiming at this player. He makes a sharp movement to a position behind the wall for no apparent reason, yet it probably hit this player's center line.
With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute. With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute now. With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute now. With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute.
You see how it's not just a sharp movement. It's a sharp movement, then a little adjustment, and then a larger but gradual movement.
With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute.
So there's the fast one. And then he goes up slightly. And then up again. And then just gradually right as this player's jumping probably.
With the sniper still alive. With the sniper still alive.
When if you were just trying to throw a grenade in that spot, that's not usually going to involve too small or very gradual movements like that. And the fact that everything coincides more or less with what this target was doing is pretty suspicious.
With the sniper still alive. He's been alive for about a minute now.
Here we have Victory X pre-aiming at a player.
In great positions, and he always connects with headshots.
Yeah, Frauditself is a really...
And it's the second time that he tries to target this player when he's jumping to look above the barrier.
In great positions, and he always connects with headshots.
Yeah, Frauditself...
In great positions, and he always connects with...
He just happens to have this pretty much aligned.
In great positions, and he always connects with headshots.
Yeah, Frauditself is a really good player. I love just the makeup of...
In great positions, and he always connects with headshots.
Yeah, Frauditself is a really good player. I love just the makeup of...
Here we have Frauditself pre-aiming at a player. He makes a movement that stops on and tracks this player's center line.
Up a final boss. I love the type of players they all have. They all... Up a final boss. I love the type of players they all have. They all... Up a final boss. I love the type of players they all have. They all... Up a final boss. I love the...
So here he's going to hit this player's center line and then track it briefly. Maybe it doesn't quite track, but just hitting the center line alone is pretty suspicious, because you can see these players are aiming discontinuously. Even when they're doing something as simple as turning a corner, they often do it with a series of separate movements, and we're seeing that these movements constantly coincide with players' center lines. You guys realize they're playing without radar, right?
Up a final boss. I love the type of players they all have. They all... Up a final boss. I love the type of players they all have. They all...
Here we have Ogre 2 twitching, which is maybe something that the Ogres used to do for whatever personal reason. Or maybe they started doing it to cover up for aimbot usage. We'll see. After that, his aim seems to interact with this player, coincidental to the player coming into view. And then after that at the shotgun, he's maybe pre-firing at this player, but something about it just seems off to me. It could be pre-aiming or a trigger bot.
Just as the overshield came up, got that overshield behind, sticks him, so that full overshield depleted, and the rush there by Final Boss is going to be stopped. Destin, though, sneaking over to Final Boss's base, and he just stole the flag. Just as the overshield came up, got that overshield behind, sticks him, so that full...
You can see as this player comes into view, there's these little adjustments in Ogre's aim that don't really make any sense.
Just as the overshield came up, got that overshield behind, sticks him, so that full overshield...
Or they're just a little coincidental.
Depleted, and the rush there by Final Boss is going to be stopped. Destin, though, sneaking over to Final Boss's base, and he just stole the flag. Just as the overshield came up, got that overshield behind, sticks him, so that full overshield depleted, and the rush there by Final Boss is going to be stopped. Destin, though, sneaking over to Final Boss's base, and he just stole the flag.
There's such a...
Just as the overshield came up, got that overshield behind, sticks him, so that full overshield depleted, and the rush there by Final Boss is going to be stopped. Destin, though, sneaking over to Final Boss's base, and he just stole the flag.
Here we have Ogre 2 with a zoom that coincides with a player becoming visible. His aim also passes through this player's head. He doesn't shoot at him though, because that would be too obvious.
Does such an excellent job at stopping the flank.
Here we got Vinny making this.
Does such an excellent job at stopping the flank.
Here we got Vinny making this.
Does such an excellent job at stopping the flank.
Probably the same frame. And appears to hit this player's head.
Does such an excellent job at stopping the flank.
Here we got Vinny making this.
Here we have Dustbin with some wonky aim. He also turns and possibly off-tracks his player in a way that should be somewhat rare.
Vinny making this one as they take down Frauditself, who had the sniper.
Well, right now, Dynasty's
Making this one as they take down Frauditself, who had the sniper.
well, right now, Dynasty.
Making this one as they take down Frauditself, who had the sniper.
Well, right now, Dynasty's.
Making this one as they take down Frauditself, who had the sniper.
Well, right now, Dynasty's gonna.
Here we have Dustbin possibly pre-aiming, and then he seems like he was unprepared for what the movement was, and then he possibly extra shoots.
Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the training side. If Dynasty doesn't get everyone on their team back, I don't think they're going to get this cat.
This isn't one of those clips where they're directly pre-aiming at a player, although we've seen Dustbin do that 3 times in a few seconds. It's just one of those ones where there's a purposeful looking movement that coincides with the frame that a player becomes visible.
Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the training side. If Dynasty doesn't get everyone on their team back, I don't. Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the training side. If Dynasty doesn't get everyone on their team back, I don't think they're going to get this cat. Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the training side. If Dynasty doesn't get everyone on their team back, I don't think they're going to get this cat. Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the.
Dustbin just started making this movement, right? And this player's coming into view right here. Same frame.
Everyone back to their base. You can see Final Boss is now going to push on the training side. If Dynasty doesn't get everyone on their team back, I don't think they're going to get this cat.
Here we have Dustbin possibly pre-aiming twice.
Doing a great job staying alive and cleaning up kills over on green box. aPoopGamer needing help. Pistol pushing him, and a nice beatdown by aPoopGamer. Ogre 2 is going to put a stop to that run. Doing a great job staying alive and cleaning.
This is the first one. It's just kind of a sharp movement for what he's doing here in its position in the hallway. And we can see that it comes very close, if not completely, to this player's center line. Maybe not, though. If this were a different player, I would say that one's fine. So we can just ignore that one.
Up kills over on green box. aPoopGamer needing help. Pistol pushing him, and a nice beatdown by aPoopGamer. Ogre 2 is going to put a stop.
And that one's maybe not too bad either. I am sure that this player's cheating, so the second movement could have been pre-aiming, but maybe not. So this clip doesn't really mean that much.
Doing a great job staying alive and cleaning up kills over on green box. aPoopGamer needing help. Pistol pushing him, and a nice beatdown by aPoopGamer. Ogre 2 is going to put a stop.
Here we have aPoopGamer pre-aiming.
Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green box as It's 2. Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green.
So this is a little similar to the previous clip, where these pre-aiming movements are not that accurate. They're not right to a player's center line, but they're purposeful and very close. And even those types I feel like should be more rare than what we're seeing. There's some variation on pre-aiming movements happening in like half the clips, possibly even more than that, with those variations on pre-aiming being movements that don't hit a player but off-track them when motion is divergent, aiming movements that are coincidental to players becoming visible, and small movements immediately before a target becomes visible, like we've seen from Hysteria in previous videos, and from Fear itself in this video. And those are just the pre-aimings that we're seeing. And that's why I say, if someone has the VODs for all these players from these games, this will be easy to prove, because they're constantly aiming at people through walls. When you consider how often we're able to see that happening, it must be happening constantly. The past two from Dustbin haven't been that bad, but they're pretty close. These movements don't have to hit center line to be suspicious. The aimbot probably has some variability that it introduces, and that's how you end up with these off-trackings that shouldn't be happening. And with Dustbin's two previous clips, there is some off-tracking associated with the pre-aiming movements, but his motion is matched in both of those cases, so it's not really that suspicious, except that his motion starting in the same direction is kind of coincidental too. So those last couple from Dustbin are kind of borderline, just because it's not that accurate and it doesn't appear to off track. It's just pretty close to the player and coincidental. But those are going to happen naturally, obviously. It's just becoming a question of, we've seen some that pretty much can't be a coincidence, and we're seeing these coincidences in like half the clips. So it probably is pre-aiming a lot of times. And another thing about these types of possible pre-aiming movements is that players are making them when there's not really a clear reason why.
Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green boxes. Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green.
We're seeing them make these movements before they're at the end of a hallway, or when they're still inside P2. Like here, aPoopGamer is doing this, but we can see he doesn't jump out of the base. So why is he turning that much to the right? Because he does that and then he falls back down into the base.
Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green boxes. It's 2 to. Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green boxes.
I mean, you have to have your aim somewhere. But why was he doing that as he's just falling back into the base? And that's something else that makes these aiming movements suspicious. They're making these deliberate coincidental movements when there's really no other explanation why.
Boss not giving up on this flag yet. Victor X getting distracted on green boxes. It's 2 to.
Here we have aPoopGamer turning right to this player. And maybe I've been calling this sort of thing pre-aiming, but I shouldn't be. I should have a different term for this.
It's 2 to 1, but Dynasty needs to be careful. All 4 members of Final Boss alive, and they're coming for this third flag. It's 2-1, but Dynasty needs to be careful. All 4 members of Final Boss alive, and they're coming for this 3rd flag. It's 2-1, but Dynasty needs to be careful. All 4 members of Final Boss alive.
His aim hits this player's center line and then goes straight down from there. In one continuous movement that's at one speed, at one angle. And I just think that we're seeing this too much.
It's 2-1, but Dynasty needs to be careful. All 4 members of Final Boss alive, and they're coming for this 3rd flag.
Here we have Pistola acquiring a target with 3 quick axial movements. There's also an odd hesitation before he begins to shoot, and then his reticle stutters a little bit as he kills this player. And then the second player, he makes a movement that off-tracks the player, where his aim is way off, but he hesitates to shoot again. And then he has a hanging stab, despite the fact that he should know he's not going to be able to hit this player.
Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover fire. You got Fear Itself there as well. Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover fire. You got Fear Itself there as well.
So he's not shooting at the player because he's reloading, but that actually just makes the clip worse, because that's probably the explanation for why there's no aiming adjustment being made.
Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover fire. You got Fear Itself. Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover. Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover fire. You got Fear Itself there as well. Pulling a flag here on Needle.
So here this first acquisition is 3 axial movements. Up, right, up. Up, right, up into a pretty good tracking. But then he hesitates to start shooting for some reason.
Pulling a flag here on Needle. Pistola and Ogre 2 providing great cover fire. You got Fear Itself.
Here we have Pistola possibly pre-aiming. As he jumps onto the ramp, he makes 2 small adjustments, and then happens to be aiming directly at this player as he gets to the top of the ramp.
There as well. Fear's taken down, but Victory is alive. Crutch the only. There as well. Fear's taken down, but Victory is alive. Crutch the only. There as well. Fear's.
You can see there's 2 little adjustments there. And as I've talked about before, players aren't usually going to make really small adjustments for no reason.
There as well. Fear's taken down, but Victory is alive. Crutch the only member alive. There as well. Fear's taken down, but Victory is alive. Crutch the only member.
Here we have Dustbin possibly pre-aiming at a player. It's another one of those in a gray area where it's a sharp coincidental movement that off-tracks the player, but that's kind of okay because their motion isn't divergent. But then he starts to track the player, and then his aim moves the wrong direction with a small curling movement that then goes back to the target.
They came through, they stopped the cap, and they wasted no time in trying to bring their flag back.
Fear Itself the only.
They came through, they stopped the cap, and they wasted no time in trying to bring their flag back.
Fear Itself.
They came through, they stopped the cap, and they wasted no time in trying to bring their flag back.
Frauditself.
They came through, they stopped the cap, and they wasted no time in trying to bring their flag back.
And this one isn't that bad, but we're seeing quite a bit where you'd be aiming at the corner consistently as you rounded it so that you're ready to shoot whatever becomes visible. They're not like gradually trying to target that spot. Most of these snaps go past the corner into the wall, and then there happens to be a player there. That doesn't apply to this clip, but we've seen one in this video that it does apply to, and it's going to be something that we see a lot. So he makes that movement. And then he tracks this player's foot for a couple frames. So by this point, he's accurately tracking this player. His aim goes to the right with a very small curl. And that's just small and gradual and fine in a way that you're not going to find on the 360. I'm not even sure you can do that with a thumbstick. Look how small and round and gradual this movement is. I recommend you go try that if you have a 360.
They came through, they stopped the cap, and they wasted no time in trying to bring their flag back.
Frauditself, the only back in the...
Here we have Crutch acquiring a target with 4 separate quick axial movements. His aim also goes a little wonky when this player goes out of view.
Back in the second half.
And we watched them do the exact same thing for status quo. They were down 2-0. They tied it up before the...
Back in the second half.
And we watched them do the exact same thing for status quo. They were down 2-0. They tied it up before...
Back in the second half.
And we watched them do the exact same thing for status quo. They were down 2-0. They tied it up...
Back in the second half.
And we...
And that's getting pretty close to the length and speed that's not possible. And when I said that players will aim with axial movements, a more common case where you'll see that is if there's a player up here or something that they want to aim at, and it's a pretty long distance. It is pretty common for players to go like this, or like this, or maybe even to do it in 3 movements like that. It's much more common in those types of larger movements. They don't usually aim from here to here with 4 separate axial movements. There's a wide variety of things that they're going to do, but this isn't it.
Back in the second half.
And we watched them do the exact same thing for status quo. They were down 2-0. They tied it up before the regular...
Back in the second half.
And we watched them do the exact same thing for status quo. They were down 2-0. They tied it up before the regular...
Here we have Crutch with a suspicious rectangle windmill, which, like Z Nightmare's rectangular kickout, probably shouldn't exist.
Regulation, and then they ended up winning the game. If that happens here, I'll be surprised. regulation, and then they ended up winning the game. If that happens here, I'll be surprised.
There's just something off about this movement too. Like there's no acceleration or something.
Regulation, and then they ended up winning the game. If that happens here, I'll regulation, and then they ended up winning the game. If that happens here, I'll be surprised.
Here we have Crutch acquiring a target with a very small circle, which just means he's using an aimbot.
Dynasty rolling on all kinds of momentum. Dynasty rolling on all kinds. Dynasty rolling on all kinds.
This first zoom is maybe even coincidental to this player coming into view, and then he unzooms for some reason and rezooms right when he starts shooting.
Dynasty rolling on all kinds of momentum. Dynasty rolling on all kinds of momentum.
And it looks like a sharp chop up and down in fast motion, probably related to his teammate getting in the way, but in slow motion we can see that's actually a tiny circle. And that's a textbook aimbot movement.
Dynasty rolling on all kinds of momentum here after.
Here Crutch's aim is really wonky, and he also pre-aims at this player. There's a small stutter in his aim that hits this player's center line, and would have required Crutch to make an adjustment before he knew this player was there.
Momentum here after that counter cap. I thought the game was over, but Crutch put enough for rifle. Momentum here after that counter cap. I thought the game was over, but Crutch put enough for rifle. Momentum here after that counter cap. I thought the game was over, but momentum here after that counter cap. I thought the game was.
As he jumps up to plat, he's just turning towards the needler, but he does it with separate movements instead of one movement, and one of these short movements happens to hit this player. And starts at pretty much the exact time this player comes into view.
Momentum here after that counter cap. I thought the game was over, but Crutch put enough for rifle.
For some reason I thought this clip was earlier in this video, and I think I made a reference to it that was probably confusing. At any rate, this clip is over too, starting to zoom in the same frame that a player becomes visible.
For rifle, he's got 4 shots in the next clip, and he for rifle, he's got 4 shots in the next clip, and he's through camera. For rifle, he's got 4 shots in the next clip, and he's through. For rifle, he's got 4.
You can see this player becomes visible in the same frame that he's starting to zoom. He seems to maybe off-track the player a little bit too, and their motion is divergent here.
Rifle. He's got 4 shots in the next clip, and he's
through camo.
Again, not something that's great evidence on its own, but worth noticing, and something that has broader applicability in terms of proving this mathematically, but not something in isolation that I would accuse over 2 based on. Here we have Pistola with some pretty clear target confusion.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a smart grab.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a smart grab.
This wasn't even the instance of indecision that I was thinking about when I said we're going to see a worse one. But this one's pretty bad. He can see this first player pretty clearly. He's close to him. He sees him first. He's pretty close to the center of his screen.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a
But Pistola makes that sharp movement towards someone he supposedly saw out of the corner of his eye, but then changes his mind before he even gets his reticle to that player. A Halo player is not going to survive long with this amount of indecision.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a smart grab.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the...
So here you can start to see this player. You can start to see this player and his aim is moving towards him. Still hasn't seen the more distant player. In this frame, he can see the distant player this close to the edge of his screen. And then his aim stops immediately. For several frames. Gets pretty close to that player. And then he goes, no, I should shoot the first guy.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a smart grab running.
It's maybe possible he was focused on that part of the screen instead, but people are usually focused on the center of their screen. That's kind of the entire point of your reticle being in a certain place, especially when you're turning that fast. When you're turning that fast, it can already be kind of hard to see things. You're not turning that fast and having your eyes focused at the corner of your screen. Usually. Maybe he just saw that player first, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But between that and some of the chop and the pre-aiming and the axial movements, his clips are getting pretty suspicious.
Through camo.
So here we go, Pistola versus Heinz. Heinz right around the corner. Pistola with a smart grab.
Here we have Crutch pre-aiming, and then near the end of the clip, his aim is going to redirect as soon as it hits a wall, very close to him, similar to things that we've seen with Soldier 187 and aPoopGamer.
Running on adrenaline every time Final Boss puts their back up against the wall. Dynasty pushes back even stronger. Crutch running on adrenaline every time Final Boss puts their back up against the wall. Dynasty pushes back even stronger. Running on adrenaline every time Final Boss puts their back up against the wall. Dynasty pushes back even stronger. Crutch.
With these continuous movements as these players move into new areas and expand their visual fields, they're constantly aiming directly at players or very near players, and this is ridiculous. They should be going past targets, coming up short. It should be much more random than this. I think that should be pretty obvious to most people. I don't even remember how normal this kind of stuff is in legit gameplay, because I wasn't even paying that much attention to it. I never expected that people would use an aimbot that was this obvious, this openly. But I guarantee once we do look at legit gameplay, this stuff is not going to happen very often.
Running on adrenaline every time Final Boss puts their back up against the wall. Dynasty pushes back even stronger.
And then it's here at the end that we can see his aim bounce off this wall. To the pixel.
Running on adrenaline every time Final Boss puts their back up against the wall. Dynasty pushes back even stronger. Crutch being head.
This clip might not be anything, but I'm already pretty sure that Pistola is cheating, so we'll just keep it in here. This might be a case when one of these players has a movement that they know they didn't input, and that alerts them to the presence of a player in a certain part of the map.
That overshield, Dynasty is looking really bad right now in this situation.
But a smart play right here by Pistola to go back to his base and clear out his own base before attacking.
It's hard for me to tell if I just feel like this clip is suspicious because I'm already suspecting him. But there's something about the way he's looking around here that just kind of seems like he knows there's someone there. He's looking just the right amount in just the right places. And that first movement may have even been the one that alerted him to this player.
That overshield, Dynasty is looking really bad right now in this situation.
But a smart play right here by Pistola to go back to his base and clear out his own base before attacking.
That overshield, Dynasty is looking really bad right now in this situation.
But a smart play right here by Pistola to go back to his base and clear out his own base before attacking.
Maybe not, but we'll see. Here we have Pistola pre-aiming.
Anywhere in the Dynasty base or try to go for that flag. Instead, he was going for full map control, and it's looking good. Anywhere in the Dynasty base or try to go for that flag. Instead, he was going for full map control, and it's looking good.
As he's moving out here, he has his aim centered in the green box area. And that makes sense because he doesn't know if the first player he's going to need to shoot is going to be on the left or the right. But he can actually see the player on the left first. And he makes a very small adjustment right before this player on the right comes into view.
Anywhere in the Dynasty base or try to go for that flag. Instead, he was going for full map. Anywhere in the
So at first his aim's centered in the green box. Then he snaps there. Then this first player comes into view on the left. And instead he makes this very small, gradual movement. And I guess part of what makes that unusual is that if you were convinced a player was coming up in that spot, you would just try to move your aim there. It wouldn't be this very consistent movement. That kind of fine, consistent movement is something that you're much more likely to see in a firing movement when someone's trying to line up a shot. Players don't try to target that accurately spots on the map that are completely irrelevant as far as they know. And then, of course, the guy ends up being right there. And then as soon as the player on the right comes into view, at that exact moment, he decides to target the first player. This movement actually looks like it curls down too, which makes this much more suspicious, since you can't really do these fine little consistent curls with a thumbstick at this scale. Again, like I've said before, I haven't tested this stuff on the 360 in a long time, like a year, but I'm pretty sure that movement is going to be next to impossible to replicate.
Anywhere in the Dynasty base or try to go for that flag. Instead, he was going for full map control, and it's looking good right.
Here we have Pistola pre-aiming, and this one he verifies himself, because after he snaps to this player, he keeps trying to run the flag, and or gets surprised and tries to target his teammate.
With the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola's got... With the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola... With the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola... With the Rockets...
He's going up and out of the base with like 3 separate movements, and one of them just so happens to hit this player's center line, and then he keeps trying to run the flag. I think the number of separate movements that they're doing is pretty high too. I think that's going to be higher than legit gameplay. That's also something I didn't look at in legit gameplay, because most of what I studied to learn how to spot this aimbot was the old montages. So most of what I picked up on was related to firing movements, and not so much the movements while people navigate the map. When you're rounding a corner into an open area, there could be benefits to having a lot of small movements like this. The number of movements that Pistola inputs here doesn't really give you any benefit, and there was like 4 of them.
With the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola...
It's just all these little separate movements that are short.
With the Rockets pushing into the flag,
even though there's no benefit. As he's doing this, he's actually turning kind of late. He could have looked into the shotgun area sooner than he does.
With the Rockets pushing into the flag, with the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola's going to...
Or at least in that situation, there's no benefit in doing that movement in 4 separate movements, instead of just one large movement that gets you pointed in the direction of the shotgun.
With the Rockets pushing into the flag, Pistola's going to...
Here we have Dustbin with a stuttering movement. That's probably related to a trigger bot activation.
Boss's push, and now Dynasty has an opportunity to push over to the FB side of the map. Boss's push, and now Dynasty has an opportunity to push over to the FB side of the map. Boss's push, and now Dynasty has an opportunity to push over to the FB side of the map. Boss's push, and now Dynasty has an opportunity to push over to the FB side of the map.
Here we have Fear itself pre-aiming. The initial movement that happens to hit this player's center line was done with a reaction time around 50 seconds. Even if you say that one was an accident, the deliberate movement after that down to the player was done at a reaction time of 150 milliseconds, which is still pretty fast.
They picked up 2 huge kills. APG and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything with this. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz.
He also has that weird stutter there at first, with some purposeless shooting. This is the first frame that he can see this player. So from here to when he starts moving his aim right is around 50 milliseconds. And it hits this player's center line exactly. And then the movement down to the player starts at 150 milliseconds.
They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything with this. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything with this flag. They picked up 2 huge kills. aPoopGamer and Heinz are not going to be able to do anything with this flag.
Here we have Frauditself pre-aiming. He also aims at the opening here, but borderline snapping to the edge of the wall, pixel perfect, is not exactly what I was talking about.
Guys, put Dynasty in your forum, Sigs. This is the new team to watch going into Dallas. Remember, earlier today, they secured their spot in the National Championships final. Guys, put Dynasty in your forum, Sigs. This is the new team to watch going into Dallas. Remember, earlier today, they secured their spot in the National Championships final.
You can see that he makes a small movement down just before this player comes into view.
Guys, put Dynasty in your forum, Sigs. This is the new team to watch going into Dallas. Remember, earlier today, they secured their spot in the National Championship. Guys.
And then after that, he has a very short, sharp movement, and it hits the edge of this wall and stops. It goes a little bit past the edge. So in slow motion, actually, it's not quite as bad, but it's still a little suspicious. Quickly snapping to edges of walls is probably one of the harder things to do with your aim.
Guys, put Dynasty in your forum, Sigs. This is the new team to watch going into Dallas. Remember, earlier today, they secured their spot in the National Championship.
That burst maybe hangs a little bit too, and maybe accelerates out of that a little bit. And he's waiting for the burst to complete even though the player's long gone.
Guys, put Dynasty in your forum, Sigs. This is the new team to watch going into Dallas.
Here, Frauditself's aim is just a little wonky, and it's maybe stuttering a little bit.
Raleigh. Both of these teams putting on a for the win in Raleigh. Both of these teams putting on a for the win in Raleigh. Both of these teams putting on a for the win in Raleigh. Both of these teams putting on a.
Here we have Heinz pre-aiming. He can see one and maybe even two players at snipe 2 before he sees the player in the courtyard, but he targets the player in the courtyard anyways. In slow motion, his reaction time on this first player is not as suspicious as it seems at first, but it's still 150 milliseconds. It also seems like he's aiming at this player with a series of target locks, and at least one of these target locks is when their motion is divergent. And then after that, the player at S2 starts shooting him, and he makes a decision to run away, and then he appears to change his mind, like he's going to challenge the player, and then he decides again to run away.
We got the flag running, guys, for Dynasty. Clutch is going to be taken down. Heinz trying to make sure that... We got the flag running, guys, for Dynasty. Clutch is going to be taken down. Heinz trying to make sure...
This, I'm pretty sure, is the first player he can see. Then here's the second player he can see. But he's not reacting to either of those players. He's instead doing axial movements that end up targeting this player. And I'm pretty sure you can start to see this player in this frame. But that movement is still at 150 milliseconds. And then here he's tracking his foot when their motion is divergent. So these movements are starting to look like target locks. And then here, he turns very close to this player's center line, and he should know there's two people over there. It would be pretty surprising if he didn't notice either of those two players, because they were the only players on screen. He targeted this player despite not even seeing him. So then he turns close to center line. Appears to say, this player has the jump on me, I'm going to run away, or try and get into the base. So he starts to do that, but then he appears to change his mind, like he's going to target this player. But then he quickly changes his mind again. And players just don't play with this amount of indecision. You actually can't play Halo with this amount of indecision, probably. You're not going to last long if you can't decide who you're shooting at or if you're running away or not. Oh, I'm going to run away. No, wait, I'm not. Yes, I am. And in the meantime, you're getting shot the entire time. No one plays Halo like that.
We got the flag running, guys, for Dynasty. Clutch is going to be taken down. Heinz trying to make sure that...
Here we have Ogre 2 pre-aiming.
They're gold. One shot, they're going. Gold there. What's got?
I don't know.
That's the one. They're gold. One shot, they're going. Gold there. What's got?
I don't know.
That's the one. They're gold. One shot, they're going. Gold there. What's got?
I don't know.
That's the one. They're gold. One shot, they're going. Gold there. What's got?
I don't know.
That's the one.
Here we have Ogre 2 with a movement that's very slowly accelerated, and then his aim also stutters when this player goes behind a wall.
Thanks, Howard. I'll help you.
Ready to go, MPGs. Your guys' pitch street.
The first movement up ramps up really slowly.
Thanks, Howard. I'll help you.
Ready to go, MPGs. Your guys' pitch street.
Thanks, Howard. I'll help you.
Ready to go, MPGs. Your guys' pitch.
Thanks, Howard. I'll help you.
Ready to go, MPGs. Your guys' pitch.
Here we have Ogre 2 with some wonky aim. There's some axial movements in here, and a small half circle that are getting a little suspicious, but for the most part it's just wonky.
Big set.
From behind you. Right.
Yeah, I got stuck, but I killed him. Big set.
From behind you. Right.
Yeah, I got stuck, but I killed him. Big set.
From behind you. Right.
Yeah, I got stuck, but I killed him. Big set.
From behind you. Right.
Yeah, I got stuck, but I killed him.
Here we have Ogre 2 with more wonky aim. He tries to shoot this player through the barrier in the basement, and there's just something about the sharpness of that movement, coupled with the way it smoothly tracks after that doesn't seem natural. And then his aim goes wonky at the end when he loses sight of this player.
Behind me. Hold on, shot at my blue star. Blue pink, one shot. He's hiding. Blue pink corner. Behind me. Hold on, shot at my blue star. Blue pink, one shot. He's hiding. Blue pink corner. Behind me. Hold on, shot at my blue star. Blue pink, one shot. He's hiding. Blue pink. Behind me. Hold on, shot at my blue star. Blue pink, one shot. He's hiding. Blue pink corner.
Here we have Fear Itself pre-aiming.
Absolute above you on the shield. I got shots.
He turns and hits this player on accident.
Absolute above you on the shield. I got shots. Absolute above you on the shield.
Here we have Fear Itself turning and coming very close to hitting a player across the map.
Blue two. I got him. Last guy. He's one shot. Blue two. I got him. Last guy. He's one shot. Blue two. I got him. Last guy. He's one shot. Blue two. I got him. Last guy.
Pretty close to center line.
Blue two. I got him. Last guy. He's one shot.
This clip is from Pistola. His reaction time isn't too fast here, but it kind of seems like it is, because this entire series of movements seems deliberate maybe, but his aim is also just wonky, And he moves his aim from B1 to B2 with a series of axial movements. Maybe he's getting that call out here, so he kind of knows that's where this player is. But using axial movements here to shoot at B2 is nonsense. Like if he's intending to target B2, why is he aiming at the floor the entire time he turns around? Here we have Pistola's aim stuttering up and down really slightly when this player dies, and this is probably related to the recoil glitch.
Red one, red two, red two. I'm red two. I'm red two. It's finding. Red one, red two, red two. I'm red two. I'm red two. It's finding. Red one, red two, red two. I'm red two. I'm red two. It's finding. Red one, red two, red two. I'm red two. I'm red two. It's finding.
Here we have Pistola with a windmill of a size that's not very common. It also appears to be one consistent speed, and then his aim stutters up and down a little bit.
One shot on the tower. He's on the big tower. One shot. One shot. The guy one shot on the tower. He's on the big tower. One shot. One shot. The guy one shot on the tower. He's on the big tower. One shot. One shot. The guy one shot on the tower. He's on the big tower. One shot. One shot. The guy one shot on the tower. He's on the big tower.
That's a pretty sharp snap for having no aim assistance. And then here's where his aim is stuttering up and down.
One shot on the tower. He's on the big tower. One shot. One shot. The guy
Here we have aPoopG pre-aiming really obviously. I don't know how people are going to defend these types of clips, especially given how often we're seeing them, but they will. Here we have Dustbin with movements that possibly coincided with this player's center line twice.
Nice shots, Ryan.
And that's this one. And then that one.
Nice shots, Ryan. Nice shots, Ryan.
Here we have Dustbin with some wonky aim. This is one of those clips where everything in it in isolation is not that bad, but when taken together in this time span is a little suspicious. So first he acquires a target by hitting his center line first, which is just harder and less common than aiming at a player. Then his aim is just kind of wonky as he turns around. And he does something that I've been noticing, where a lot of times that these players are making large deliberate movements, and either pre-aiming or hitting a player cross map or something like that, they have a little movement before that movement in like the opposite direction, or a short little movement down for no reason before they do the large movement. And we see something like that here. Then we have maybe a trigger bot activation where he moves his aim past the target in a consistent way. That just seems a little off. And then there's a quick vertical movement in his aim when he loses sight of this player. Doesn't quite hit the center line, but pretty close. And again, hitting the center line like that is less common than you think. It's pretty hard to hit specific spots on the 360 with no aim assistance. It's much easier to aim at the player. And then after that, we see that he makes a small movement left before he turns right. And that's not very relevant in this clip, because what he goes on to do with his aim is not really that deliberate. But we're going to see that type of thing a lot, where the larger movement that follows ends up being a turn right to a player or something. And then here there's just something off about how far past this target he goes. He's shooting when he makes this movement, but he doesn't adjust his aim at all to try and hit this player, even though he's deciding to shoot. So that just seems like maybe it's a trigger bot activation. And then the little up and down movement here is not really something you'll see very much when it's this clean. I already know that this player is cheating, based on several clips I can't remember, and the clip where he pre-aims at a player 3 times. So a clip like this isn't great evidence. It's more like, since we know this player is cheating, these are some of the things that we should watch for when it comes to other players, where maybe we see some of those things, and then we know that we need to pay more attention to that player. Here we have Heinz pre-aiming, and he also has some bad decision making, and his aim is just generally pretty wonky. You can see that he turns very close to this first player's center line, and has his aim lined up with this player before he jumps up above the box. And then here, both of these players come into view at about the same time, and he decides to shoot the player he can't hit instead of the player below him who's completely exposed. So the player on the left that he tries to shoot first came into view 1 frame before the second player, who we should already know is kind of down there and exposed. And by this point, the second player is the much more obvious player in my opinion. But he targets the player who came into view 1 frame earlier, who he obviously can't hit, before immediately changing his mind. Probably not a reaction time issue hinging on 1 frame. Here we have Heinz with some wonky aim, and then at the end of the clip he pre-aims.
They spawned at 2 of them. Kill the guys right ping, guys. They still has 1 shot. They still has 1 shot. Here's a 1 shot. Nice. Front of blue. They spawned at 2 of them. Kill the guys right ping, guys. They still has 1 shot. They still has 1 shot. Here's a 1 shot. Nice. Front of blue. They spawned at 2 of them. Kill the guys right ping, guys. They still has 1 shot. They still has 1 shot. Here's a 1 shot. Nice.
So here, he's not only pre-aiming very close to this player, he's making a small continuous adjustment at the same time that off-tracks the player. It's not a perfect off-tracking, but the fact he's making that small adjustment right is pretty much nonsense, and is clearly immediately matched to what that player is doing. He starts this movement towards this player in 83 milliseconds. By the time he gets here, he could have reacted to this player being visible and then made this adjustment, but his initial movement towards this player is already hitting the wall, so he's moving his aim the wrong direction. His initial movement is there. He should make an adjustment left so that he actually might hit this player, but instead he's aiming further into the wall. And it's a safe assumption about professional players that they know how to push the stick left instead of right.
They spawned at 2 of them. Kill the guys right ping, guys. Pistol was one shot. Pistol was one shot. Here's the one shot. Nice.
Here we have Dustbin pre-aiming at least one player.
Take one more shot. Take one more shot. Pistol. Red side.
The second player he obviously turns right to. And then this first player's in question. He's getting a call out that this player is at A1, but A1 could mean a lot of things. But he turns very close to where that player is.
Take one more shot. Take one more shot. Pistol. Red side. Take one more shot. Take one more shot. Pistol. Red side. Take one more shot. Take one more shot. Pistol. Red side. Take one more shot. Take one more shot. Pistol. Red side.
Here we have Dustbin extra shooting.
Red near, guys. What's out right there? Top right, top right, top right, top right. Red near, guys. What's out right there? Top right, top right, top right, top right. Red near, guys. What's out right there? Top right, top right, top right. Red near, guys. What's out right there? Top right, top right, top right, top right.
Here we have Dustbin with a predictive pixel perfect snap to the edge of a wall.
Nice. Let's push. Let's push. Let's push. Let's push.
Pixel perfect. And it takes him 450 milliseconds to begin shooting at this player. Here we have Heinz with some very wonky aim. He also possibly pre-aims at the player at A1. On this first player, he shoots the wall twice, which is a little weird. This last shot here, his aim moves up and down, as if targeting this player's head, even though he can't see him. And this probably was right on this player. And then here, I'll help you guys out again. I'm Pistola. Here we have Fear itself with map awareness. That's so good he locks onto a player he can't see instead of the obvious player. He then has a snapback in his aim, and then he goes on to aim with a series of short, sharp movements. Here you can see the obvious player that he doesn't target. He comes out of cover with his aim way off the center of the base. And instead moves his aim sharply to this spot, where there ends up being a player. And then he does something that we've seen before, where there's two available targets, and the player ends up shooting like right in between them. Then he has a sharp snap back into an off-tracking movement. And then hits this player with a series of short, sharp movements that are all accurate. Here we have Fear itself snapping to a player on accident, right as that player's spawning. The movement that hits that player is very small, and like I've talked about before, that's a movement that clearly served no purpose. That wasn't a movement designed to do anything specific, or look at a different part of the map, or expand his visual field in a certain direction. It was a completely purposeless movement that just so happens to hit this player, and then he immediately does something else, proving that it was an accident.
See how they
I guess you could say he's trying to target the edge of the box there, which I could buy if he wasn't pre-aiming at players so often. This movement also starts in the same frame that this player becomes visible.
see how
Here we have Heinz turning into an off-tracking movement, but it's not a very suspicious one. And then he fires a bad rocket, which I just like putting in here.
Team Slayer. Heinz right away getting up top and getting the rockets. Gotta love this start.
Wait, I just want to know where final ball.
Team Slayer. Heinz right away getting up top and getting the rockets. Gotta love this start.
Wait, I just want to know where final.
Here we have Heinz with another bad rocket, and his aim is pretty wonky when he shoots this one.
And they're controlling the power weapons.
Yeah, I really like the play right there for Heinz. He could.
And they're controlling the power weapons.
Yeah, I really like the play right there for Heinz. He could.
And they're controlling the power weapons.
Yeah, I really like the play right there for Heinz.
And they're controlling the power weapons.
Yeah, I really like the play right there for Heinz. He could have.
And they're controlling the power weapons.
Yeah, I really like the play right there for Heinz. He could have rockets.
Here we have Heinz possibly turning 180 degrees to this player.
Rockets to just basically get a lucky kill.
Nice.
And given that his teammate was in danger here, it takes him an oddly long time to shoot, in my opinion.
Rockets to just basically get a lucky kill.
Nice.
And one of the things that makes this seem like a deliberate movement is that he's not moving forward once he's turned around. And by that time, he probably should be moving forward into the lobby, instead of staying out here with his back exposed to the rest of the map.
Rockets to just basically get a lucky kill.
Nice.
Like, even if he wanted to see what was in there before he moved behind the glass, he still seems like he should have been moving forward by that point. Because what he does in this clip is just kind of stand still in the doorway, where he can get shot by everybody. And that just becomes suspicious when you combine it with how he turned to this player.
Rockets to just basically get a lucky kill.
Nice.
Dominated.
Here we have Victory X pre-aiming twice. And on this first player, his aim also pulses up and down.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top, final.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top, finally.
So this first pre-aiming on this first player in the doorway That one reminds me a little bit of one of the first clips from Pistola, where he's on the pit, sniping from one green box to the other, and he pre-scopes the hallway. And it's just that the way they're doing it is too deliberate. It's too directed at the player, where normally a player is going to be approaching new visual fields in a much more neutral way. And it's just kind of obvious that they're playing the player and not the map. And you really shouldn't see that when there's no radar. On this first player, you can maybe excuse it because he's targeting the doorway, but that still doesn't really make sense. He should just be approaching the map in a neutral way here. And he actually would have had someone to shoot sooner if he had done that. And really, this just isn't how people play.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top finally here at the hill.
And then in closed pink, he pre-aims again.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top finally here at the hill moving.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top finally here at the hill.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top finally here at the hill.
His approach to the map on that first player was a little more neutral than I thought at first. It's much more neutral than Pistola's earlier clip, where he's turning down the green box hallway and really targeting a specific spot, which doesn't make any sense. This one is a bit more excusable.
Dominated by Dynasty.
You got final boss up top finally here at the hill moving and about.
Here we have Ogre 2 with some pretty wonky aim.
Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all kinds of fire from Rokke 2, but that allowed his teammates to come on the flank. You see two guys pushing through. Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all.
This quick movement off target here reminds me of times that we've seen players aim react to walls, and that's probably what this is. This wall here. It's like his aimbot knows not to shoot that, or is trying too hard to not shoot it. But like I've talked about before, players usually aren't paying that much attention to things in the foreground like that when they're trying to shoot at somebody. In fact, they're often shooting walls that are close to them. It's not something you really have to worry about, because you can either hit your target or not. And if you can't hit your target, then you can't be shot.
Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all kinds of fire from Rokke 2, but that allowed his teammates to come on the flank. You see two guys pushing. Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all kinds of fire from Rokke 2, but that allowed his teammates to come on the flank. You see two guys.
And then there's a sharp triangular movement here at the end that's pretty wonky.
Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all kinds of fire from Rokke 2, but that allowed his teammates to come on the flank. You see two guys. Obi came back, and let's see how Ogre 2 plays this. Nice job avoiding those grenades. Hit by the second one, and he's taking all kinds of fire from Rokke 2, but that allowed his teammates to come on the flank. You see two guys pushing through. Behind.
Here we have Ogre 2 zooming again as soon as a player becomes visible. He appears to zoom in the same frame, or the first frame after this player becomes visible.
Heinz picks up a double kill though, and keeps final boss from taking top control and the spawns in lobby. Heinz picks up a double kill though, and keeps final boss from taking top control and the spawns in lobby. Heinz picks up a double kill, though, and keeps Final Boss from taking...
In this frame, we can start to see the player's name come into view there. And in the next frame, he's zooming.
Heinz picks up a double kill, though, and keeps Final Boss from taking top control and the spawns in lobby. Heinz picks up a double kill, though, and keeps Final Boss from taking top control and the spawns in lobby.
Here, Ogre 2's aim is a little wonky, both side to side and up and down.
Ogre 2 sat top gold, waited for his teammates, and now he waits for them and pushes to the hill. Ogre 2 sat top gold, waited for his teammates, and now he waits for them and pushes to the hill. Ogre 2 sat top gold, waited for his teammates, and now he waits for them and pushes to the hill.
Yeah.
He might have been pre-aiming at this player, but this is a natural and neutral enough movement that we'll assume it's fine.
Ogre 2 sat top gold, waited for his teammates, and now he waits for them and pushes to the hill.
Yeah.
Ogre 2 sat top gold, waited for his teammates, and now he waits for them and pushes to the hill.
Yeah.
Moves to close.
Here we have Pistola with some wonky aim. He has what seem to be a couple target locks in here, including one right after he gets kicked out. And he gets kicked out into a target lock. And I'm pretty sure that kickouts tend to resolve more organically than this. He also re-snaps probably to this player through a wall. And at the start of the clip, there's just something about how his motion is matched to his movements that just doesn't seem natural to me.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key to this game type.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key to this game type.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss.
So right there as he looks across at the other street, and then back to the ramp here, that's where I feel like his motion and his movements are related in a way that's not natural. And it reminds me of that one clip on Guardian where the player was at S3, and the way they pivoted around the corner was really smooth and just kind of matched to their motion. There's just a smoothness and an evenness to it, to the point that it kind of seems like a reset. And I feel like that effect probably has something to do with the player's motion.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key.
It's like he's doing something really smooth with his motion that complements the movement, except that there's no real reason to do those two things together like that. And not only is there no reason to do that, players don't do it.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for Final Boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key to this game.
And then here we can see that his aiming is a series of target locks. First there, and then he gets kicked out into a second target lock. And then here he seems to change his mind about what he's doing, and this movement maybe comes very close to where this player probably is. Like, why is he even aiming back at that player? He keeps backing up to the doorway behind him the entire time.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for final boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key to this game type because it's so hard to really attack.
Moves to close street in about 4 minutes. Look for final boss to get at least 60 seconds.
Yeah, that hill has always been the key to this game type because it's...
Here we have Pistola with some wonky aim. There also seems to be some aimbot target confusion in here. And he has one of those hanging shots in between two players.
Because it's so hard to really attack. On the open street hill, you have the ramp that you can come up and flank. Because it's so hard to really attack. On the open street hill, you have the ramp that you can come up.
Like this shot that hangs in between the players. He also pretty sharply snaps into that position, which is weird because he's way off target. And the snapping in general was softer on the 360 than it is on MCC.
Because it's so hard to really attack. On the open street hill, you have the ramp that you can come up and flank. Because it's so hard to really attack. On the open street hill, you have the ramp that you can come up and flank.
Here we have Victory X possibly pre-aiming 3 times. And his aim is just pretty wonky and kind of nonsense.
And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right now. No one even in position for it. Looks like Heinz may have just burned it, actually.
He might actually have pre-aimed 4 times in this clip.
And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right now. No one even in position for it. Looks like Heinz may have just burned it, actually.
And then he dies. So the first one is obviously here as he turns to the lift.
And final boss gains the lead.
His approach to this is pretty neutral, but the turn does oddly match that player's position, and he also makes a very small vertical adjustment right as he starts to turn. And then here you could argue that this is pre-firing. I'm not convinced that pre-firing is really even a good idea in Halo. People do it more now because the skill ceiling is compressed in certain aspects, because the game is a lot easier. But if you don't time it up right, or your aim is off, then you might be giving up first shot. Either way, maybe this is pre-firing, maybe this is pre-aiming.
Down low, the overshield coming up right now. And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right.
He could maybe guess pretty closely where that player was based on what his teammate was doing.
And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up.
And then here we have a weird retrograde movement that might be related to the lattice work in the glass and the aimbot targeting this player or not targeting this player. It's hard to say.
Right now, no one even in position for it. Looks like Heinz may have just...
But there's a retrograde movement there that coincides with that player's position.
And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right now. No one even in position for...
So that was maybe the third pre-aiming. And then we see him swing his aim past this player by quite a bit, which seems inexplicable until we see the fourth player jump in from that side of the screen.
And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right now. No one even in position for it. Looks like Heinz may have just burned it, actually. And final boss gains the lead using that top bill. The hill moves down low. The overshield coming up right now. No one even in position for it. Looks like Heinz may have just burned it, actually.
Here we have Heinz with some wonky aim. And there's a snap in here that's a good illustration of one of my earlier points.
Remember, Dynasty is just one game away from advancing to our winners bracket finals, where they will. Remember, Dynasty is just one game away from advancing to our winners bracket finals, where they will. Remember, Dynasty is just one game away from advancing to our winners bracket finals, where they will. Remember, Dynasty is just one game away from advancing.
And that illustration is here with this snap. When there are movements like this, I would be surprised if there wasn't a player on this line. And this one seems like a good example of that. Like I've talked about, where we're only seeing a small fraction of the pre-aiming movements, and their aim is probably snapping to players through walls constantly, either to the players or somewhere in relation to them, literally on one of these two axes. And I suspect that's probably what happened in this clip.
Remember, Dynasty is just one game away from advancing to our winners bracket finals, where they will be.
Here we have Pistola making a weird and inexplicable movement, and this is something that I've talked about before.
To come back in this series.
All right, final bosses is they are down by about 14 seconds. Chris is shaking. They are down by about 14 seconds. Chris is. All right, final bosses is.
To come back in this series.
All right, final bosses is they are down by about 14 seconds.
And it's that sharp back and forth there. What do you think? Is there going to be a player there or no?
Chris is shaking his head. He agrees. Let's crank up our Astros as we listen in.
Obviously, there was a player there.
To come back in this series.
All right, final bosses is they are down by about 14 seconds. Chris is shaking his head. He agrees. Let's crank up our Astros as we listen in.
And if we slow this one down, we can see that this movement is actually pretty weird.
To come back in this series.
All right, final bosses.
The aimbot might have thrown that grenade for him, but that's common enough. Obviously, we're just going to ignore that. Here he's intending to look up and then throw a grenade. And this movement goes right, maybe curves up, and then goes back to the left. And it stops very close to where his aim is right here. Then it goes straight up, then slightly right, and then straight up again. And I didn't notice this before, but you can see something come into view in this frame. and that's either this player's head or possibly a grenade that player's throwing. And then from here, Pistola looks up, and then there's a very small movement right before he throws this grenade. A very small movement. Not an adjustment you would expect from a player who's just blindly throwing a grenade to some spot, which means maybe he's reacting to that one frame where he maybe saw the player's head. It wouldn't surprise me if that is that player. And now that we know that, that entire movement seems related to this player's exact location. Maybe. But yeah, there's a lot of little weird things going on in his aim there. And when you see something like that, it pretty much guarantees there's a player there, which obviously we see ends up being true.
To come back in this series.
All right, final bosses is they are down by about 14 seconds. Chris is shaking his head. He agrees. Let's crank up our Astros as we listen in.
So that's it for this video. I'm going to have to split this batch of clips into multiple parts. We're about a third of the way through 2 hours and 15 minutes of gameplay. The clips have been pretty bad, and a lot of them have been pretty similar in terms of the pre-aiming and things like that. So I can't quite remember who's had the really bad clips and who's had the borderline clips. And we're also getting into some of the bigger names. So I probably won't move anyone to the lock cheater list for anything in this video, but we'll pretty much put everyone on the probable list. So we have Crapola, Frauditself, defeat Y. You can defeat Y when you don't even have to press it anymore. And the last new player for the list, Hacker2. Hacker2 is the one player who maybe doesn't deserve to be on this list yet. His clips have been borderline, but he is having some wonkiness and chop in his aim that shouldn't be there. We're maybe seeing him pre-aim, and he seems to have a habit of zooming in the same frame that players are becoming visible. But honestly, at this point, if those clips were the only thing I had from him, I probably wouldn't accuse him. But we're obviously getting into a situation here where you can say it's not fair, but someone probably can't be considered the best player ever if they were competing in a field full of cheaters, but weren't cheating. That's probably not possible. And I've seen enough from him where it's kind of like with SK, where I know we're going to see really bad clips from him. The two players that I could maybe move up right now would be aPoopGamer and Heiney. Their clips are pretty bad. We're seeing clips from them where the pre-aiming is really obvious, and we've seen Heiney with some pretty questionable decision making. We're also later going to see him jump off the map on accident, which I threw in the pre-aiming supercut, and he looks down at his controller in disbelief. And I don't recall ever jumping in Halo when I didn't press the button. So that's interesting. And then two of the lock cheaters that we saw in this video are Crutch and Dustbin. And those players are obviously a hot mess, and they're going to be a gold mine moving forward. So yeah, there will probably be 2 more videos from these clips, and then I think there's about 5 hours of this tournament left. And then after that, I'm probably going to do a couple videos showing legit gameplay, and I think as we do that, some of these things are really going to start to click for you guys. It might be a while before I get to that. If the last 5 hours of the tournament is anything like this 2 hours, that's going to be several videos. And believe it or not, I do have a job. It's halftime. Anyway, see you next time.